All right, the laundry list of Joe Biden executive orders continues to grow by the day. The United States is rejoining the Paris Climate Accord. I can't even say it. It's so bad. Shutting down the Keystone Pipeline, placing a freeze on oil production in states like Wyoming and New Mexico, which is certain to impact you at the pumps. Reversing the fact-based policy of the Trump administration on transgenderism in the military with an order today that treats the military as it were, like under the Obama administration, simply a petri dish of social experimentation. Now, this doesn't even get into his nominations. And also, as I mentioned today, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi was to have delivered articles of impeachment for Donald Trump. So much for unity. Joining me now to talk about all of this and more, Senator Cynthia Lummis of Wyoming. Senator, welcome to the program.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with you, Tony.
So let me start with the issue of one of the executive orders, Senator Lummis, on the freeze of leasing land's oil production in a state like Wyoming that is heavily impacted by such a decision.
Well, absolutely. This executive order applies to states with large amounts of federal land, and I think it also applies on the outer continental shelf for offshore oil and gas production. Wyoming's a very large state with a very small population, in fact, the smallest in the country. About half of our land is federal land, and a lot of our tax revenue comes from oil and gas on federal and non-federal land. So if you take half of that land off the table for oil and gas exploration and production, the hit to fund Wyoming's schools and infrastructure is profound. Now, President Biden, as you have pointed out, stood before America promising to unify the nation, and yet on day one, he took divisive actions to devastate Wyoming's economy. And it just strikes at the heart of Wyoming jobs and families and communities, as well as other states with large amounts of federal land. It may appease the radical left, but it is borne disproportionately on my state of Wyoming and on states like us.
Well, Senator Lummis, I know obviously you're elected to represent the people of Wyoming, but these are policies that will transcend the borders of Wyoming. As you mentioned, offshore oil is affected by this. But the consumer is going to pay a price for this. I mean, we have been experiencing a unique situation in America under the Trump administration where we actually became an oil exporter. That actually drove down oil prices, and at the pump, consumers paid less. That's going to change under policies like this.
Under policies like this, if they're allowed to be carried on, it will raise gasoline prices, it will raise energy prices, the cost to heat your home, to cool your home in the summer, all will be impacted. Our ability to export oil and gas will be impacted. The Keystone Pipeline is going to be a huge loss of jobs, as well as an important relationship between our neighboring Canada and ourselves. So we're impacting consumers, jobs, revenues, and all to what end, Tony? What we need to do is innovate our way out of this climate issue, not regulate our way out of the climate issue. And that's something that people from energy states all over the country, including West Virginia, care about. So I want to work with my fellow senators and the White House to innovate our way out of this. We can now capture carbon right out of air. It's being experimented with in the Permian Basin in Texas, even as we speak, capturing carbon literally right out of the air. Why in the world would we punish the very companies that are innovating this extraordinary technology in this way?
Senator, it appears that these executive orders that the Biden administration have executed thus far are not based upon science or based upon evidence, but more a political payback to his radical left base.
Well, and it was a radical left base that was very much nurtured when he was vice president of the United States, and they are picking up literally where they left off. They're trying to reverse as many of the pro-business, pro-family executive orders that the Trump administration adopted as quickly as they can, and getting ready for the second administration of Obama-Biden so it's term number 3 for the policies that we saw during that era. And Tony, you know what happened during those 8 years. We saw legislation that created Obamacare, cash for clunkers, that drove our debt up dramatically. And the list goes on. And it was all done in the name of a nod to leftist policies and not science-based. Science has never settled, Tony, and one of the great things that Americans do is innovate in areas where a problem is identified and needs a solution. This is one of those areas. Climate science will benefit by oil and gas development, not be hampered by it, because those are the people that are investing the dollars to get the carbon out of the air. Honestly, this is the height of finding a solution and then ignoring it.
Right.
Ignoring it as if we were incapable of further innovating.
Yes, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here or a dead cow, according to the Green New Deal, but I think it's important to point out that these policies that are attacking the oil and gas industry, the coal industry, as you pointed out in West Virginia, ultimately the people that are disproportionately hurt by this are those in the lower economic classes, because they have to pay a higher percentage because of the energy costs, whether it's to heat their homes, whether it's to put gas in their car and take their kids to school or go to the grocery store or go to work. I mean, this is hurting the very people the Democratic Party says they want to help.
Exactly right. When it costs more to fuel the tractors that produce the food gets more expensive. If it costs more produce the energy or it's less abundant, the heat and the cooling is more expensive. And as you pointed out, it impacts lower income people to a much greater degree than high income people. So this is so detrimental to jobs and good paying jobs that help raise people out of poverty, and then at the same time on the consumer end smacks them again. So it has that full effect on people who are low income producers. I know a lot of people in Wyoming who are working in the oil and gas fields for good wages in Wyoming, and now they've gone to Texas where they're producing oil and gas on private land. So we lost wonderful Wyoming citizens whose spouses were teachers or nurses or were involved in their local civic organizations. It has had a real impact on Wyoming, and it will continue to if the Biden administration has its way.
Very quickly, Senator Lummis, let's talk about the impact this has had on the United States Senate, in particular Republicans who were listening to the inaugural address last week about unity, rethinking how they could work with this administration. What are these actions that are being taken by President Biden communicating to the Senate?
Well, exactly. He stood before America and promised to unify the nation, and yet on day one, he took divisive action to devastate us. You pointed out a couple of them, suggesting that transgender military policies need to be changed. Once again, we'll be in a situation where taxpayer dollars will go to fund the gendering of people who requested in the military. Our military's focus should be on national defense and national security, not on social experimentation. And when you add that to the other matters that on immigration, on oil and gas production, all of these policies do not bode well for unity.
Yeah, absolutely, without question. Senator Cynthia Lummis, thanks so much for joining us today. Great to talk with you, and look forward to talking to you again real soon.
My pleasure, Tony. Take care.
All right, Senator Lummis of Wyoming.